History doesn't just rhyme. Sometimes it just turns the same crank with a heavier chain. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Penn Square Bank in Oklahoma City operated as a financial centrifuge of manufactured optimism. It didn't underwrite risk. It originated speculative energy loans, sliced them up, and shoveled participations downstream to sleeping giants like Continental Illinois, treating high-risk wildcatting as safe paper because the price of crude only ever went in one direction. When the energy market cracked, the illusion of liquidity vanished overnight, and the cascading systemic crater that followed required massive federal intervention to keep the whole superstructure from folding. That single-branch bank on the north side of my city is where the phrase "too big to fail" was born. What analysts are tracing across private equity and direct lending today is the exact architectural blueprint of Penn Square, scaled up, sanitized by level 3 marks, and injected directly into the administrative machinery of local government. Only this time it's worse. Penn Square was built on commodities and localized exploration. Today's model is built on systemic, recursive self-dealing, where the buyout shop, the direct lender, the software vendor, and the asset managers behind the whole stack are the same extractive pipeline wearing different names. The fatal flaw is identical, the unshakable faith that an exit window will always be open. The system runs on a fiction of 40 to 50% loan-to-value ratios that once you count the subscription lines, bridge loans, NAV loans, co-investments, LP financing, and insider margin debt stacked on top, routinely balloon to an 80 to 90% true leverage stack sitting on stagnant assets. Interest gets paid in kind. Companies don't pay cash. They pile the unpaid interest onto principal and book it as income. And that same liability quietly disappears when the same firm reports how levered it is. Unlike a traditional banking crisis, where a distressed asset can eventually find an independent buyer to reset the price, today's 32,000 private equity-backed companies are trapped in a game of musical chairs where sponsors engage in creditor-on-creditor violence, moving good collateral into boxes outside lenders can't reach, while the lenders left outside are holding an empty bag. You can watch the exit window slam shut in miniature if you know where to look. Main Street Sports Group. The entire premise of that company was that a debt-loaded regional sports broadcasting empire could perpetually outgrow its leverage through financial engineering and a triumphant sale to a digital giant, DAZN, waiting in the wings. When the deal actually got looked at by somebody with real numbers and no reason to be polite, it fell apart. Because the underlying asset was a hyper-leveraged ghost ship, and no serious buyer catches a falling knife wrapped in 5 to 10 turns of legacy debt. That is the same door that closed on Penn Square, closing again, smaller, in public, on live television, in the middle of the country's sports business. It is not an anomaly. It is a preview of what happens when the same due diligence gets applied to the other 31,999 companies still waiting for a buyer who isn't coming. 17 years ago, right as that housing crash was fracturing the global economy, Oklahoma City faced a real choice on infrastructure. A rare one, the kind that doesn't come around twice in a generation. We could have kept and rebuilt the Union Station rail yard and used it as the foundation of something durable. Real transit, real construction jobs, real public infrastructure that still pays dividends decades later, the way it has in every city that made the opposite choice we made. Instead, the decision was made to tear it up for the highway lobby, and according to transit activist Tom Elmore's own written account of the encounter, when he went to ask Mayor Cornett's office whether the administration's sudden talk of support for transit development meant they'd help save the yard, Cornett's assistant at the time, a young David Holt, met him in the foyer and told him he had 1,000 cops he'd sick on him if he tried to stop it. Holt is also said to have told him, "You're so far behind the times. You don't even know that in a couple of weeks we'll be down there destroying that old rail yard, and then we won't have to listen to you complain about it anymore." That isn't the language of a man weighing a hard infrastructure trade-off. There was no trade-off being weighed. Real infrastructure was never seriously on the table because the men in that building had already decided, at some level below conscious strategy, that financialization was the answer before the question was even finished being asked. I don't think that makes Holt a mastermind who foresaw in 2009 that the ZERP-era bull run would someday run dry and require a rail pivot he could later ride to political advantage. I don't think anyone is that far-sighted, and I don't think you need to believe it to see what's actually happening. Complex systems don't require a conspirator at the center pulling levers. They require a disposition, repeated at every decision point, by people who never have to examine it because it keeps working. And financialization as the answer was Holt's disposition in that foyer in 2009. And it is still his disposition now. A man doesn't need a plan to end up, decades later, standing in front of a modest transit fix and calling himself the visionary who finally solved a crisis he helped manufacture. He only needs to keep being exactly who he already was. That is the era the ZERP years actually built, and it built more than empty rail yards. It built a generation of hollow, venture-backed, private equity-nurtured enterprises. An endless parade of what critics have started calling ZERP slop, the algorithmic sludge engineered for engagement and stripped of anything resembling lasting value, running on cheap money and zero accountability. It is the same asymmetry at every scale. A man earning $100,000 can maybe qualify for a $300,000 mortgage, while a corporate entity earning the same can secure a $1 million leverage line without anyone blinking. Because everyone involved already knows that if the structure wobbles, the state arrives to catch the corporation and nobody arrives to catch the man. Ordinary people carry the risk. Corporate extractors play with the house's money and call it strategy. That culture produced a specific kind of politician, one who can maintain a warm, curated, benevolent public persona while quietly presiding over the sale of the city's own machinery to finance. It's why the administrative plumbing of this city, the record-keeping, the public notice system, the citizen engagement portals, has been handed to private equity aggregators like Granicus. Why a company like Transom Capital can walk away with a $150,000 arrangement just to keep publishing the legal notices the public is legally entitled to see. Why the new downtown arena's management contract runs through Artemis under terms built to extract maximum event revenue, while the public carries the capital costs. None of it requires a villain twirling a mustache in a back room. It only requires a city government that reaches by reflex for the financialized answer every single time, run by men who never have to reconcile that reflex with the image they've built for themselves, because nobody in the room is asking them to. In 2008, the wreckage started at the bottom, with a family and a foreclosure sign, and it rippled up to the lenders who had it coming. Penn Square wiped out regional balance sheets before the damage climbed to continental Illinois. This time it's inverted. It starts at the top. In the Greenwich portfolios, the fee pipelines, the $750 billion a year the financial engineering class pays itself. But because that same class has already swallowed the municipal contracts, the software, the insurance books, and the public infrastructure underneath cities like this one, the damage will not stay contained in a boardroom when the marks finally meet reality. It will show up as a service cut. It will show up as a budget nobody can explain. And the people who never saw a dollar of the 15-year run-up will be the ones asked to absorb what's left of it. That is the man Oklahoma City has been asked to see as a light on a hill, soft-spoken, online, forever a step ahead of the crisis he's solving. He is not a step ahead of it. He is a step inside it, and has been since a foyer in 2009. And the only thing that's changed since then is which side of the ledger he's currently standing on when the cameras are running.